So we are in starting week 3 of our Sravasti Abbey Friends Education Program. And one great beauty of the program is, of the course, to the credit of the designers and so forth, is the opportunity that people have to send in their reflections each week on how the teachings have impacted their life. And so this week, I was particularly taken with this one person's reflections, and Venerable Children thought they would be useful for everybody to think about. So I'm going to read a little bit of what she wrote, and then we'll talk about it just a bit. So she says, this week's reflections on karma came up a lot, quite a bit. We do not know what karma we come into this life with, so that will always play a role in our present lives. However, she said, there seems to be more of a connection between our intentions and actions of this life and the experiences of this life than I've realized before. It's much more subtle and direct and nuanced than I have experienced. Let me explain more, she says. From the time we're little, we figure out that every action has a reaction. We put our finger on a hot stove, we get burned. Action, reaction, simple. But in the last few years, and particularly since I connected with the SAFE course, life has settled way down. Drama, disaster, harsh words, turmoil, and so forth do not come like they used to. So I have been examining this. Yes, she said, it could have to do with my stage in life to some extent. But I'm still at the same job, live in the same town, associate with the same people, so nothing has really changed. What has changed is my commitment to live according to the 5 lay precepts, the bodhisattva practices, practicing kindness and generosity, and applying wisdom before I say or do anything. That's a big change. It's a huge change. And she says, I'm talking about even tiny little things, like not taking an extra sugar or salt packet from a restaurant if it isn't needed for the thing I ordered. Or not speaking badly about people. Or stopping those thoughts if they even arise and replacing them with thinking of the person's kindness instead. Picking up a sharp nail along the side of the road with the motivation that by doing this, some sentient being may not have to go through the anguish of getting a flat tire. Surprising my coworker with a new Wonder Woman doll because her old one went missing from her office. And it's so worth $15 to see her smile so big. She said, the list goes on and on. But these are not direct cause and effect examples like the finger on the hot stove. They are much more subtle and evolve over time. In reflecting on how chaotic my life has been at different points in the past, which we can all probably recognize, I can look back and see that living the Dharma to the biggest extent possible these last few years has somehow set the causes and conditions in motion for a calmer life now, and hopefully will also produce a favorable rebirth. So these are such great examples. More nuanced, yes, and there's kind of a direct result also. If we are refraining from killing, for example, most of us probably have not been in the habit of killing human beings, but the other things that we have been in the habit of killing, not setting the mouse trap or, not putting that worm on the hook and going fishing for the weekend, completely turns our attention to other beings and the effect that we have on the environment. Actually, all of the things that she's talking about, to me, really talk about our awareness of what kind of effect we have on the people around us, on the beings around us. Not taking what hasn't been freely given, not telling lies, not engaging in sexual misconduct, not engaging in intoxicants. Well, this uncomplicates our lives incredibly. You think about all the antics that we've done in the past, the mayhem that has been created based on just sort of mindlessly going through these kinds of destructive acts without actually knowing they were destructive even, right? So on the one hand, it looks more subtle, but on the other hand, I think it's really huge. And so the direct result of that is a more peaceful life. Less chaos, less turmoil. What did she say? Fewer harsh words. Because why? You haven't upset so many people in the same way that we do in the past when we're doing these things mindlessly. And then to do things with an intention of loving kindness and generosity, to think, to see an accident waiting to happen and correct it before it does out of a kindness for others. Then what? We not only have engaged in our non-harming, we have engaged in our wish to help others, we've overcome our self-centeredness a little bit. I mean, all of these directly combat our self-centeredness. Surely we've all walked by that nail too lazy to bend over at some time or another. See it, too bad. Hope it doesn't hurt somebody, and on we go. Too tired, too busy, too whatever. But then to have the intention to be aware of the happiness and suffering of other beings. You bend over, you take the nail, you put it in your pocket, and so you've engaged in a virtuous act. You've created some merit. You can rejoice in the goodness of that. So, of course, there's a big change in life. And this thing about hopefully it will produce a favorable rebirth, well, it's a good cause to keep working on. So this was very, very insightful, I thought. And Venerable Children obviously agreed, because she said, you should do this on a BBC. And I think it's helpful to really think about karma in that kind of way, actually. To look at the more subtle ways that we engage in activities day by day and how they influence and affect others. Partly because it helps us expand the repertoire of those things. And also because it then gives us an opportunity to rejoice and dedicate. If we don't notice that we're doing these things, then that opportunity to rejoice and dedicate slides right by. But if we're aware and really dedicated, just as she says, and may this produce a favorable rebirth, so I can keep doing these things in the future. Well, all the better. And may it be a cause for my own enlightenment too. She also wrote a thing that, a little bit of a endorsement for the program. I find that when I'm involved in SAFE courses and have required studies every week, that my lifestyle really shifts away from, as Lama Tsongkhapa says, being attached to the joys of cyclic existence. Much progress is made during these periods. So, yeah, it's very nice. So may everyone who gets to be involved in the SAFE course, of course, have that level of awareness and growing practice, and may it bring benefit to everybody.